Whoever's doing that. All right, I see it. All right, very good. So let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our kickoff session for upcoming improvements at Enderly Park. Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation staff are excited to begin the process of working with you and your neighbors to identify improvements at Enderly Park that reflect your needs. Ultimately, we want to ensure that Enderly Park continues to be a vital and loved part of the neighborhood for many years to come. We wanted to hold this initial community engagement at the park, but recent health directives required us to stay virtual for today's meeting. Given our improved COVID status in Mecklenburg County, we will be planning some in-park activities as we move forward in this process and into spring. So during today's meeting, we want to discuss how the project was funded and share some of the history of the park. Most importantly, though, we want to hear from you. We have a series of questions and discussion items to share today that will give you a chance to help direct us in how we improve Enderly Park. We'll wrap up today's meeting with an overview of the project schedule. So for anyone here who hasn't spent a lot of time on Zoom, very quickly, wanted to go through some of the features of our virtual meeting platform. It's important that everyone stay muted throughout the presentation, though there will be times during the presentation where you'll be asked to unmute to share some of your information. You'll see a microphone shaped button in the bottom left corner. If the red slashes through it, then you are muted. If you have questions or comments throughout the presentation, please use the chat function. There's a chat button on the bottom of your screen that will bring up and activate the chat box there. Later, when we do give everyone an opportunity to unmute and share your thoughts, please use the raise hand button if you would like to speak. And so I know some people prefer the chat rather than talking, but if you would like to unmute, if you hit the participants button at the bottom of the participants window, there is a raise hand function right there. So let's test the chat window out first. Please type in your name and your favorite outdoor activity. I will wait for some of those to come through. I'll say mine out loud since I'm already unmuted. I'm a hiker. I'm kind of like Kayla. Kayla's walking and hiking. We got some bikers, camping, fishing. I like that. Golf when there's time. Definitely agree. All right, very good. So last year, the Board of County Commissioners set aside $2 million as part of a broader equity initiative to use for reinvestment in park and recreation facilities. The funds that will be used to improve Enderly Park come out of that equity funding. Over the past 18 months, Mecklenburg Park and Rec have been working on our new Park and Recreation Master Plan, MEC Playbook. One component of the plan was a full inventory and assessment of all of our parks, greenways, nature preserves, recreation centers, and other department facilities. As a result of the assessment, each park and recreation facility was given a grade. Enderly Park received a grade of D, so that made it a candidate for it to receive some significant investment now. This same system will be used to prioritize future investment and reinvestment in our facilities. We completed an inventory and assessment of over 250 park and recreation facilities. This assessment provides us a snapshot of our current conditions in every facility and will also be updated every 2 years. Over time, this assessment will serve as a tool for benchmarking progress and prioritizing investment and reinvestment in our facilities. The process will provide us with an improved method of accountability, making sure that we have a critical eye on all of our facilities on a regular basis. So here's a quick summary of our grading system. We looked at the overall state of the park, the condition of park amenities, how well the paths and trails in the park are functioning, whether the park looks well kept, and whether or not the park is easily accessible for people of all abilities. Facilities that received an A grade tended to be those that were most recently received significant investments. And so these facilities will continue to receive our routine maintenance. Facilities in an acceptable condition received a grade of B or C. These facilities are in relatively good condition, but are beginning to show some wear and tear that will need to be addressed soon. These facilities will be addressed primarily through our capital reinvestment program, which we've referred to as deferred maintenance over the last several years. Finally, facilities in poor condition will receive a grade of D or F. These are the facilities that are in immediate need of attention and significant investment. So you can see after our assessment, these are all of our neighborhood parks. You can see kind of how everything graded out. And a number of our older parks are neighborhood parks. And so we see here that we need significant reinvestment in our neighborhood parks in the short term. And then the other two parks that we're going to be working on in the coming year are LC Coleman Park and Tryon Hills Park. So let's begin the input portion of today's meeting. We're going to be trying a few new methods of receiving and documenting your input today. First, we want to get an idea of how many of you have ever visited this park. So in a few seconds, a pop-up window will appear with our first poll question. Simply select your answer and hit submit. And we'll give everybody a minute to go through. This one is pretty straightforward though. So while you're making your selection, I'll let you know that this same poll question is on a public input website we've developed specifically for this project. We'll share that link at the end of our presentation. All right, I haven't voted, but I don't get to vote. I think that might be everybody that's going to vote there. So 82% of the folks on here have been to Enderly Park. Not surprising. All right, very good. All right, let's see. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Enderly Park over the years. Here's an aerial that I dug up from 1951, which was 2 years before the main property was purchased for the park. That purchase was made in 1953, and an additional purchase was made in 1962. So you can see at this time, I think Freedom Drive there looks like a small dirt road with no commercial activity whatsoever, but a lot of the houses in the neighborhood were already built. Here's an interesting fact that we dug up. So the first park bond was passed in the city of Charlotte in either 1949 or 1950 with an idea to build a playground in every neighborhood. At that time, the word playground was used to describe a park. So we use the word park these days. Approximately 25 playgrounds or parks were built through that bond. The deed for Enderly Park requires that the oldest portion, the 1953 portion where the baseball field is, that property is always to be used as a park and to be called Enderly Park Playground. So we believe that Enderly Park was a result of that initial park bond. So we moved forward in time a few years to 1966, and we see that the ball field is shown there. You can even see the lines of football in the outfield the same way that we use it today. And there's a little bit more development around. Enderly Road is actually built at this point, but some of those other facilities haven't shown up yet within the park. Fast forward to 1990, And we see pretty clearly the baseball field is still there. The basketball and tennis courts have shown up, and it even looks like that the playground may have been at one point down the hill a little bit closer to where the baseball field is right there. And those facilities were built between 1980 and 1990. Since 1990, smaller improvements have been made to the park through our capital reinvestment or deferred maintenance program, replacement of playgrounds and shelters, court resurfacing, things of that nature. But no significant improvements have been made to the park. Other park and recreation facilities nearby include Camp Green Park on the other side of Freedom Drive, Betty Ray Thomas Rec Center, and Stewart Creek Greenway. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darnika Waters to give us a quick walk through the park.
Hello, everyone. I'm Darnika Waters, and I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough as Bert indicated. Enderly Park is 8.4 acres. It is bounded by Enderly Road and Coker Avenue on either side, as indicated by the image. The amenities in this park consist of 2 tennis courts, full court basketball court, and an outdoor shelter with a grill, the athletic field, and a walking loop. There are also various play structures in the area indicated by this graphic. Now we're going to get into some of the current conditions of the park. The sidewalk in some areas are cracked, uneven, and or broken. Some of the park signage, they vary, and they're not always cohesive, as you can see on the Enderly Road entrance. The entrance to the Enderly Road entrance and the Coker Avenue entrance, they're both situated above the park. So they're at a higher elevation, which in turn creates kind of a bowl-like situation for the rest of the park amenities. You can see a bit of the, thank you. With Coker Ave entrance, you can see a bit of that difference in slope on the right. Next. As we've indicated before, this park has been the recipient of some small improvements, like new play structure, equipment, and shelter. Also, the courts have been resurfaced at some point. Picture on the left shows a new play structure, and the picture on the right shows the picnic shelter, which is also an area where we have the grilling station, but it also is also an area that shows a bit of graffiti on trash cans and some benches that are needing of repair. Next, please. The tennis courts, like I mentioned, are just one of the courts that have been resurfaced. Unfortunately, in its current state, it really doesn't serve its function because of a lack of netting. You can also see the tennis courts from the Enderly Road entrance. The loop trail and field are a main draw for this neighborhood park. The loop trail measures about a quarter of a mile, and it attracts many residents for that reason. Thank you.
All right, we're moving into the more interactive portion of this presentation. So we're going to have another quick poll. As Bert mentioned, most of these questions are also on the public input page, which Katie will drop into the chat as well, so you can visit after the meeting. Let me launch this poll. We're up to 80% of people voting. I think there might be a couple more that voted last time. So I'll give you a couple more seconds. All right, up to 85 again. All right, I'm going to share the results. So as you can see, we have a couple people that this is their daily park. As we saw from some of the feedback we've gotten on public input already, a lot of people are walking on the loop trail and walking throughout the park and playing on the playground as well. It sounds like a lot of the other folks on the call visit this park less frequently. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about what could get you out here more often. Next slide, please. All right, so this will be part poll, part of chatting. So as you think about this question, you can also raise your hand to speak up and unmute, or you can type into the chat. We're wondering, one, if you feel comfortable spending time at Enderly Park, and you can tell us why or why not, or potentially what are some of the things that would make you more comfortable? Is it you'd like to have more seating along the loop trail? Do you think that some of the vegetation could be kept differently, that sort of thing?
Do we just speak like just random if we're not on a video?
Yeah, sure. You can speak up.
How you doing? My name is Derby Brandon, and your question was some things that we would like to see different at the park.
Yes.
All right. Well, let me just say, I think like before, we say, hey, we want this different or that different. I feel like the park should have like a standard before requesting anything else. For example, the standard things that I feel that should be at the park is lighting, water for like a dog or people, and also somebody needs to come in and just keep the park cleaner versus seeing drug paraphernalia, liquor bottles, beer. I think somebody needs to come a little bit often. Like if we go to the city and we go to the parks in Noda, Plaza Millwood, those are the standard things that they have, the park that's closer to Uptown or near how Tuckasegee changing the 4th. Just look at that park standard and look at the standard of our park. It's not even a standard park. I wouldn't call that a park at this point. I would call it a place to drink or do drugs. I don't consider it a park. Look at the tennis court there and look at the tennis court. That tennis court doesn't even have a net up. It doesn't even have a net. It's just a cage, like a dog cage. That's what it looks like. And that's what it attracts. But things that I would like to see done if the park was a standard suitable park would be new pavement for the basketball court, something to let you know how far you walked on the walkway or mile marker or whatever, things of that nature. Also, the tennis court, repave it. Take those fence rusted from when did they build this place? 50? Take those fences and things of that nature down and clean it up. Reseed it, water it, sprinklers. Birds don't even hang out over there because it's not even suitable. Just redo the whole thing. Make it just like a park in Noda, Plaza Millwood, or where other communities that have already gentrified, make it look like that. So the new people that's coming into the area that's kind of, changing it will feel comfortable and attract more people to come there. I don't know. Is that too much to ask? What I'm asking, does anybody on the call feel that I'm saying something that's not correct? Do y'all really consider it a park? I don't think that many people came on the call because they really didn't even know that was a park.
I think we do consider it a park, but I agree with a lot of what you said. The standards of where it is need to be raised. I would ask in terms of, let's say the tennis court, for instance. I agree with you. It's completely unplayable right now. Even if we had nets up, the cracks make it very difficult to play. But what we want to do is ensure that tennis is what's needed here. If we go in and redo the tennis court, is that something that's going to be used, or is there a better use for that?
I mean, you have a tennis court a quarter mile up the road. Why would it not be? If you have a tennis court a quarter mile up the road with people waiting to play, that would attract people to come to our tennis court. I mean, my father taught tennis, and that's a lot of people with tennis rackets and things of that nature in Enderly Park that I personally know, but we have to drive other places to go play tennis. Not alone take our children to different parks because we don't want them to get a heroin or whatever drugs they put in syringes there. And, that whole thing just needs to be bulldozed down and redone, honestly. I don't see nobody else on the call. Have you guys really ever visited the park? I mean, you want to be part of the solution. Have you ever took your children out there to play and kick over a beer bottle or saw a marijuana bust out blunt paper? I mean, this is horrible. I mean, it's horrible. It just needs to be redone. And if you put it there, guess what? It will attract people. We have people coming in investing. The old church just got sold yesterday for $2.9 million. We got hospitals coming up. We got 38 lots that have been purchased by a developer, and the minimum houses are going for $520,000. You don't think those type of people would like to play tennis or would like to come to a clean park? If you took
Derby.
this same park and let me close out. If you took this same park and you put closer to Plaza Millwood or the one to the city, do you think they would be okay with it? That's the question. Would they be okay? Of course not.
Yeah, and Derby, this is Brenton. And I put my video on, so I don't know if y'all can see me. But I think the question was whether we as individuals in the neighborhood feel safe, and what will we like to see or what would attract more people. And maybe, is the tennis court the right use for the funds? I can say, I take my daughter to the park every day. She's one. And, I'm a single white female. And I can tell you that more lighting, I agree with that. I think the sidewalk issue was, a good point that was brought up. I do personally feel safe, but I'm sure that, and I have seen a lot of the other, items that you were saying about trash and drugs and things like that. But I love that there is a park close to my home that I can take my daughter to play on the swings. What I will say is, as these enhancements are made, is making sure that we have appropriate controls in place. Like, it's great that we have these funds, right? But how do we ensure, whether it's a community group or a group of volunteers, how do we ensure that these enhancements and, the monetary funds that are being spent and time to put into this park, that it's going to be sustainable and that it's going to remain, in good condition? That is one of my concerns. The other thing real quick, just because I want to let other people talk, is I know the question was around safety and what would bring more people to the park. Again, I do feel safe, but I do feel like a lot of people do not come to the park because there are areas where, the playgrounds are sunken in. A lot of times when it rains, the drainage is really bad and, my daughter can't walk, or there's areas where you can see that they've repaved part of, the area by the playground, but it's uneven. So it's not level. The other thing I think that would bring more attention to the park is more signage, more crosswalks, flashing lights, things that make it easier and safer to get there. A lot of the roads that lead to the park are extremely busy. So visible crossing area signage. We talked about lighting, sidewalks, things like that. And I think the last thing that I'll say is just, I would love to see more people come out to the park. I would love to have my daughter play with other kids. So tables, places where we can do activities, whether it's bringing arts and crafts outside or even just community events like reading, like let's have a reading hour. I will volunteer to read to children, but just more areas that allow for that, picnics and things like that. So that is kind of my thoughts. I know Don
I
had
just
his hand
want to
raised
say-
as well.
Yeah, I was
Right.
going to go next.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Don, you have the floor.
Yeah, I agree with much of what's been said here. I'm a black male, and I don't particularly feel safe in that park, depending on the time and the time of day or the day. So one of the things, safety is the number one concern that I have. I'm not sure that Mecklenburg Park has anything to do with monitoring loitering there, but clearly it's a drug haven, and at times it's very obvious that kids would not be safe playing there. I have dogs, so I go there. I walk my dogs there. I would like to see a dog park put there. And regarding the tennis courts, I definitely, that question seems like a loaded question, because why wouldn't we want tennis courts in the neighborhood? Because, like I think the gentleman said, I know plenty of black people who play tennis, and it would attract tennis players there who live in the neighborhood or who would come to the neighborhood to visit if the tennis courts were in better condition. So I also would like to see on the softball court there to be some stands put there so that it would encourage community building. When we can go back to playing softball, you kind of have to just stand around. There are no stands there. And I take my dogs onto the park that's on 4th Street, and that park is pristine, and they're continually building and doing improvements on it, and it's already nice. I was just there maybe a month or so ago, and it's a pristine park, and they're still there. It's like every time I go there, they're continually pouring money into it, and we can't even get lights in the park at Enderly Park. So, I mean, there's definitely an unevenness in how funds or attention is being dispersed with the Mecklenburg parks, but I don't want this neighborhood to be completely gentrified before attention is given to this park. Hey, I have another question. Okay, we're on the line. You guys know what the budget is. Y'all know what is going to happen. I don't really have time to really go back and forth and play games. Like every park, let me just say this, every park, Plaza Millwood up there, they have stands. How did you give a baseball field with no stands? How can a league come out there and say, hey, we want to play baseball here. Oh, it's no stands. You know what? Y'all stand up. Hey, let's go out here and practice tennis. You know what? We're not going to give you a net. The thing about it is you guys have let this park get to this point. Nobody didn't pick up those stands and move them. Nobody didn't take the net and just move it. Y'all never replaced it because y'all didn't care. Now we're here on the phone. You're asking us, what should we do? What can we do? The thing about it is you guys dropped the ball on this part. I know tennis professional people that would love to come out here and train these kids, white or black or green. I know baseball coaches would love to come out here and have this park up to par, but you can't come to something. That's like me saying, hey, I got a $500,000 house for sale, and then you come out there, it's an empty lot. But if I have a $500,000 house for sale, guess what? I'm going to attract buyers. Do you guys feel that this park is at the point where it attracts people, decent people to come out? It attracts exactly what's out there. Crackheads, homeless people, drug people, and things of that nature, because you guys have dropped the ball. So don't put us on the phone. All of us are professional people, white and black. Don't put us on the phone here and say, hey, what do you think you should do? A light bulb, a ground, grass,
Hey,
trees.
Derby.
We want a park.
Hey,
We want a park.
Derby, I don't mean to interrupt you, and you can hate me for this, but I think, I understand your concerns, but I think the goal of this call is like the city has realized that they dropped the ball. They're investing time in. I think this is supposed to be like a positive conversation. They want to put in resources to the park. Whatever has happened in the past has been there, done that. So they really want to get our input of like, what do we want to see? So if it's that, hey, I like doing tennis with my son, or I like, playing basketball, like that's what they want to hear. I don't think that the focus of this is that they've dropped the ball or,
Yeah, I understand.
I respect
I understand
your
what you.
opinion, but
I understand what
let's
you. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're right. So the thing
But
about
what
it
do
is,
you
hey,
like?
we
I
have
mean,
a park.
like, you love.
But
going
no,
out
but
with
listen,
your
no, but
son.
listen, hold on. Let me just say this real quick. Listen to what I'm listening. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. We have a park. We just want what's out there now to be there. We don't have to tell them, oh, we need a tennis court. It's already there. We just need it to be nice. We have a baseball field. Let it be nice. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to take it the wrong way, but what's out there now, it just needs to be redone over. And if we have the budget to add stuff in it, then do it. Let's just, they've been on the phone. They send emails. I see the plan, but we don't know exactly what is their plan. Well, I mean, what do you guys plan to do? We have a budget. I mean, what is in the plan? What can we do? I guess that's the question I'm looking for at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what this meeting is to understand, like, hey, do you guys play tennis? Is that something that the city needs to invest money in to continue to have the tennis court? Or would that make more sense to have a little water park or a dog park? Like, there's only so much space. And
Right.
so I think that they're trying to gauge, how many times you go to the park and see people play softball? Like, do we want that space to be something else? So I don't think it's just improving what's already there and just saying, hey, let's just make it nicer and moving on. I think this is the time that we say, you know what? I love playing with my dog out there, and a lot of my neighbors do too. Like, maybe we enclose part of the area to have a safe dog area, or maybe, I don't know, maybe the best use isn't a tennis court or isn't a softball field. So I think that's what they want to know from us now.
Yeah,
Sure.
but part of my concern in this conversation is that we're supposed to act like we don't have grievances. I think a part of moving forward is saying this is what's happened, because one of the comments that was made is how it's maintained. I feel strongly that when this park, whatever's done with this park, and even now, there should be some standard that is kept up so that it's not so uneven, so that we won't have to worry. The community, of course, I would be happy to come and participate in, cleaning and monitoring and, generally being in the park. But there are people who do that. I know that there's staff who do that because I see it at other parks. And I do want the unevenness of how the parks are maintained in Mecklenburg County and in this neighborhood. I'd like to know how that happens that way. So it's a grievance, but it's going to I believe it's a part of this conversation, as well as contributing toward, how we can make it better and what's going to be happening with the park with this improvement.
Hey, Bert, this is Chris.
Yeah.
I can't find my raise hand button. I apologize. I would just like to offer to, I think his name's Derby. My name's Chris Hunter. I'm the park superintendent for Mecklenburg County. I've put my email address in the chat for anyone who would like to reach out to me to talk about ongoing maintenance concerns at the park. I think, again, the purpose of this meeting is to kind of try to talk about what capital improvements we can make. And I'd like for us to kind of get back to that track if we could, but I certainly want to address anybody's concern as it relates to ongoing maintenance.
Okay, well, let me ask you a quick question. Okay, what's your name again? What's your name?
My name is Chris Hunter.
Chris, I want to ask you a question. Do you feel like, I feel this way, and probably other people do too, this park has been so neglected. The funds that are coming now is just like, we need to spend, let's just say $100,000 just to get it to where it should have been. And then we're going to spend the rest of the money to get it where it needs to be. How do we know if we even request these certain items that will be maintained? How we don't know if it's going to go back to where it is now? Are you new? Have you just joined a month ago? Have you never rode by this park and seen that they needed a tennis court or basketball court? Have you not noticed these things? Because there's already a budget to keep these parks at a certain equal playing field. Have you not seen it as a superintendent? Or you can admit that the ball has been dropped? Let me just ask that question.
No, I won't admit that the ball has been dropped, Kirby. Again, I would like to talk to you offline about this. I don't want to take up more time on this call, but I would certainly welcome a conversation with you about it if you want to reach out to me. Again, I put my email address in the chat for you, and I'll leave my phone number there.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Gentlemen, do you mind if I say something for a moment?
Go ahead.
My name's Lee Altman. I'm a county commissioner, and I just want to acknowledge the speaker's distress. And I know county staff is absolutely hearing it. And I just want the speaker to know, and everybody who's listening, that equity in our parks is really important to your county commissioners, all of us, all 9 of us. It's something that we talk about in private. It's something that we talk about on our board meetings. It's something we talk about in the public. It's something we talk about to staff. I just want you to know that we are not in a place of equity in a lot of our parks, and we all acknowledge it. And it's a tremendous priority. And I appreciate the speaker who has really emphasized it, because he's right to. And, you know, all of us have a duty and obligation to try to remedy this historic wrong at Enderly Park and in many parks across Mecklenburg County. And I know county staff is committed to that, and so am I, and so is the rest of the board.
Yep, absolutely. Hear your anger and your frustration. And this was one of the reasons that we went through and assessed every facility that we have. And the fact that we've got 39 parks or 39 neighborhood parks, it was closer to, I think, 56 total facilities that scored a D or F, means that we've got a tremendous job to do in going back and reinvesting. And, you know, based on your comments today, you know, helping you kind of trust us again that we will maintain this. So with that, let's go ahead and move forward. And I'm going to use some of the information that was shared kind of on the last slide. So the next question we wanted to ask is if you could add one thing to the park. And we hear that some folks might not want anything added. We just redo everything that's there, make it new, and that's what we want. If you want something added, I heard someone mention, I think maybe it was Don that mentioned the dog park. Please write that in the chat or raise your hand. Again, if you hit the participants button, there should be a little button at the bottom of the participants window that pops up that allows you to raise your hand. I also heard in that more seating areas, like activity areas. And I can't remember if it was, I think someone mentioned water as well for dogs and for folks. Don, you want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yes. I'm the person who mentioned the dog park. I do walk my dogs to that park, but there seems like there is ample unused space there. And, you know, dog parks can be a fenced in, and that's to be specific, a off-leash dog park. They don't have to be huge. I've seen ones that are, you know, are small. It's just, I think that that's something I would like to see in the park, as well as the stands and as well as lighting and the repavement. I definitely think the tennis court should stay.
All right, thanks. And then I don't know if anyone is looking at the chat. Let's see.
And then did you get my comments about like the additional seating, but also areas like the playground cleaning up and areas for kids to either do crafts or homework, or areas, you know, just more collaborative areas for kids after school and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then we had a couple of folks in the chat, splash pad, I think that's been added, addressing the drainage issues that we have in some areas there. Lighting, restrooms, stands for ballpark. Yeah, so let's talk real quickly about lighting. And I know Division Director for Park Operations, Greg Clemmer's on the line. So when you say lighting, do you mean you want to light like everything within the park or around the park? Because typically our parks and our neighborhood parks are kind of dawn to dusk in terms of their hours. So does it make sense for us to think about, you know, potentially doing some lighting within the park itself?
Well, I think that if it's a dawn to dusk situation, then lighting doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So I didn't know that's all the parks are dawn to dusk parks.
Not all of them, most of them are, There are some parks that we do some lighting in, and typically those are ones that have rental facilities within them that can be rented kind of, particularly in the wintertime after 5 or 6 o'clock.
Right.
I think like some of our indoor pavilions are rentable until 9 or 10 at night. Other,
Right.
you know, community or regional parks that host or that have multiple ball fields, that have lighted ball fields. We typically have lighting within those for people to be able to safely get kind of to and from their cars. One reason we don't do a whole lot of like programmed sports out here is because we don't have enough parking for that, and we don't have dedicated restrooms for that. And we did have a couple of comments online where folks were requesting, you know, potentially doing some restrooms here.
Sarah, did you want to speak?
Thank you. No, it was about the lighting, just, and it's more of the safety concern. Just at association meetings, we've talked about nightfall, and that's where sometimes some of the drug activity or prostitution happens in the park. So I guess it's the lighting would maybe deter that, but maybe I understand what you mean about the dawn to dusk. So maybe that's more of a safety issue maybe than a lighting issue.
Sure.
Thank you.
And maybe
But,
even
you
from,
know,
I was gonna say, maybe even like to piggyback off of the lighting is a lot of parks have emergency call boxes. So maybe it's lighting coupled with the emergency call boxes in the event somebody is there and it gets later and something happens. I have not seen in the park any of that type of, you know, security measures. But it is very dark, especially like walking home. And some of the lights I've seen out. So maybe it's just maintaining those lights and adding a little bit more awareness for security measures.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I didn't know about this, those kinds of call boxes. That would be really interesting to maybe just consider.
Yeah, I don't know if we have call boxes in our parks right now or not. I know we've had those in the past, but with most folks having a phone in their pocket, we typically use those for emergency situations. But I mean, that's something that we can at least think about for sure.
And revisiting the lighting situation, after the comment Sarah made, I think that some minimal lighting, just as a deterrent, that word popped out to me, because if that pathway, that main pathway that's off of Enderly Road, if it's better lit, or if it's lit at all at night, whether people are allowed in the park or not, I think that it will keep people who are not going to just obey the rules anyway. It would, if the activity that's happening there is lit, whether the park is closed or not, I think that would be a good idea, even if it's not maximal lighting that you would use, you know, for a park that's used after dark, but some kind of lighting so that that there couldn't be, like, you know, shady things going on in the shadows or in the dark. I think that would be a good idea.
Just low area lighting. Okay, I got that.
Greg Clemmer, I think we can look at the lighting. I think the only thing we have to be very careful. It's a very balanced thing we have to be careful of is, I think lighting is good. We just got to be very careful where we put it, that we don't cause places, people to hang out in the shelter, that cause people to hang out there at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning under shelter, and then they try to break the lights out. So I think we've got to be strategic how we think through that. We've explored call boxes in the past. Now with the era of cell phones, people have kind of moved away from those. Sometimes they also cause a huge amount of false alarms, and then people don't respond to them. So, but everything is always on the table. But from the lighting perspective, it's just a very delicate balance that we have to work through. Just enough to be able to see in there in case there are issues, but then on the flip side, you don't want to create hangout spots like you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and someone added to the chat potentially motion activated lights, which I think we've tried in the past.
My only thing really quickly on the call boxes is also just to consider the dynamics and the area that we're in. There's a lot of people that we assume that they have access to cell phones, They may not have the resources to have a cell phone. Their cell phone might be dead, or in other cases, their cell phone might be stolen, and that's the only, access that they have at that point for
Sure.
police resources.
Sure.
A lot of this is also going to be coupled with cleaning up a lot of the drug activity and things like that. It's definitely probably not the number one priority, but that's why I mentioned it, is not just to assume that everybody has the ability to have a cell phone, especially in
Right.
this area. There are a lot of individuals that are less fortunate that do not.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, another thing is this right here. I know 2 women were sexually assaulted in the park further up the street, and they both were in dark areas, walking around. I don't know if the park keeps a record of that, but I mean, it's here on the, you can Google it and see. So it may be a good thing, if we do have like a call box, panic box, or something with the lighting, because, I think it'll be, I don't know, I think it should be something that we should look at,
Sure.
because, people are going to walk at the park, even if it's closed or not, but you still want people to be safe. So I would definitely, probably want to have some type of panic button or something out there. I don't know what's available, but I think something should be out there.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. And I agree. I think it makes sense for us to look at least adjacent to the park and at those major entrances within the park to go in and increase and improve the lighting in those areas.
You all know more than we do. What are some things that we may not know? I mean, like something that, what is the new trend now? Like, hey, this park is going to get this, or they're requesting something, because we don't want to be on the call and requesting basic stuff. And it might be some new type of technology, or a water park, or a new type of swing set, or a new indoor dog park. Like, what are the new features that are coming out that we don't know to ask for?
Sure.
Can you help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So dog parks are big. We're getting requests for dog parks all across the county, no matter if there's a dog park close by or not. Splash pads are a really big ask. The issue that we have with splash pads currently is because we have so few of them. We've got somewhere between 7 and 10 across our system, and we're trying to add more and more. But because there's such a big draw, we need to have parking associated with it, and we also have to have restrooms. And so when you think about the cost in putting all that together within a park, a neighborhood park, we don't necessarily want to increase the amount of traffic, that you have coming in and out of the neighborhood there. And we don't want to spend all the money on that little bit. And, if you don't have kids, then you might not get a whole lot of use out of that. Community gardens are something that we can't build enough of. We've got, I think, a little over 500 plots right now. And this time last year, already 95% of those were already reserved for folks to use. We're putting in a lot of outdoor fitness areas. We had one comment online where folks were asking for kind of age appropriate play spaces. And so when kids are doing one thing on the playground, what can the parents do other than sit on the bench and watch them? And so we've got kind of outdoor fitness areas, or reusing kind of a court space for fitness on one side, and then just kind of open area on another side. A lot of our courts have turned into exercise class spaces and yoga studios across the county during COVID. And that might be something that people continue to use those spaces for, which is fine.
Okay.
So those are a couple of things that we get a lot of requests for.
How many homes are in Enderly Park? How many homes do we currently have in Enderly Park? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I do know, I think we sent out postcards to every address within a half mile, and that was about 11 to 1,200 postcards.
So like a lot of the parks that are in the city, Enderly community has more houses than, or do you guys do where, like, let's say we have 2,000 houses in Enderly Park, that community needs to be able to support that park. Is that correct? Does that work like that?
That's how we typically like to do it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So let me just make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So Enderly Park is probably one of the largest communities within the city, like versus these other pockets. So our park would be like kind of suitable to support the community of Enderly Park. So we had like the water park, but does the size of it, can we do that? I'm just curious, like, can we have the basketball court, the tennis court, the kids play area, a workout area, a dog park area? Does that small area support all our wishes, like all our wants, or like, do you guys have like, hey, you can have these 4 things? Do you have anything like that
Sure.
to tell us?
Bert, can I
Yeah,
jump in?
so I mean, we've only got the space that we have, the 8.5
Yeah.
acres that we have of the park. And so
Okay.
if we want to add a lot more than what we have right there, then something has to get taken away, right? And so the baseball field and the larger outfield for soccer and football, that takes up a lot of acreage, a lot of space within the park. And so that's why we're asking a little bit about the types of things that you want to have and the types of things that you use within the park right now. So we can understand, well, if we aren't getting a whole lot of use out of the baseball field, maybe that space would be more valuable and more used if we expanded picnic shelters within that area and created a community garden. So that's
That'd be nice.
that's what we're looking for right now.
So do we have any other city?
Baseball field, if the baseball field had stands, I think that would, or softball, I think that would definitely impact its use. I think that the improvements that we need to make to this park when they happen, I think that would impact the use of the park. And I hopefully there will be money spent to just giving a facelift to the entrances, because from my understanding, you can get to the park off of Enderly Road and off of Coker. And,
That's right.
Basically Coker is a dead end. I think that there should be some money put toward making that more appealing and more attractive to residents. I mean, our neighborhood is called Enderly Park, and there is an Enderly Park. So it just seems like, that should be highlighted as, it's not, some neighborhoods that are called something park, but there is no park there. But our neighborhood is called Enderly Park, and there is an Enderly Park. So I think that, some money should be put toward some wow factor there off of Enderly and even off of Coker, or even off of Tuckasegee leading down Coker to direct people to the park.
Yep, I completely agree. The entrance can be spruced up for sure at Enderly, and it needs to be formalized over on the Coker side.
Hey, Bert, there was also a comment in the chat to think about kind of this park in relation to other nearby parks like MLK Park and Camp Green Park, which do have a good bit more acreage. And so if you think about how some of these uses may happen at a series of different parks and maybe not all at this one site.
I have a very important question, and I hate to take up a lot of time, but let me ask you this question because I don't know, and I want to know. You know how like some city lead areas, like let's say the Bank of America kids baseball team, or the Keith Clinic Little League team. Does the city park, do the kids play at the parks like they used to years ago? Like they come to the park and have their games? Yes or no?
Yes, in some parks they do.
But they don't come to that park because it just doesn't have the stands and stuff like that. Like if we had a baseball field, will we have the little Enderly Park kids city league play out there, or no? Does it work like that?
Bert, this is Chris. I'd like to answer that for him.
Thanks, Chris.
So typically what you see in programming and youth programming, kids from all over the county will register at their local recreation center, and then leagues form, and then we place games at based on geographical sign up and where people are signing up from. A field like what's at Enderly is not a field that we typically would put a league, because typically in neighborhood parks, we don't program neighborhood parks, because what we don't want is to bring a big draw of people into your community, community parking on the street during Saturday games or practice. But that field typically
if that's the case, then we should just do away with it. If that's the case,
I think Bert said something earlier today that you have to look at the deed of what has to be in the park based on early things that were put out in place. That's kind of the gist of how we typically program. But again, the folks up at Betty Ray Thomas will actually use that field for their teams to practice
Right.
and host clinics and things like that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. No more questions from me.
Yeah. And I think that the proximity of the Enderly Park to the Duke Power property, I've done a lot of work with them, and they are completely open to partnerships where, as far as community gardens, I think pretty much their vegetation management people, they would love for us to put community parks on their property so they don't have to maintain it. And I think there even could be some considerations for parking on the Duke Power, that land mass that goes all the way through right next to. Has that been considered or discussed, or is it against county rules or anything like that?
No, that's a great point, Don, and it is something that we've discussed. There are some limitations to what we're allowed to do kind of underneath those lines. My only concern with doing a community garden there is we typically do fence those gardens to keep deer and wildlife out from eating your tomatoes before you're able to take them off the vine. And so they don't allow fences in there, but we could definitely go in and work with them and see if there's a way to go in and activate it in some way. We've got greenway trails that move through transmission easements across the county. We've got parking areas. Parking isn't a problem within that. And then there's some other things that we could do in there, bike riding loop or a small bike park or something like that is something that we'd be able to do within that as well. As long as it's on the ground and doesn't require, shelter or any kind of vertical surface, they are typically open to that.
Right.
Hey, Bert, we had a question in the chat. Whose idea was pickleball at MLK Park instead of adding better basketball courts, and how does that apply at Enderly?
Yeah, so I'll give Greg Clemmer a nod on that. We got very little use on the tennis courts, from what I understand at MLK, and we're getting more and more requests for pickleball. And so I think the idea was to do some temporary striping there and see how it goes.
Yeah, those are temporary stripes. We can't really resurface those courts until late spring. So that's just temporary to kind of see if there's any interest in it, because pickleball is a huge growing sport and we're getting constant requests to do courts. So there's really no interest. Those are all temporary things. When we recover the courts out there late spring, then they will be tennis courts again. But that's just all temporary stuff to see if there's any interest, because we're getting a huge amount of interest in that area. And we're trying to see what the interest is there. So that's all temporary to see what kind of we get. And if not, there's not a huge interest, it's more tennis. When the temperature gets high enough for us to actually recoat the courts, we will do that here late spring, but we can't do that right now. It's too cold. And so probably it has to get above like in the 60s to 70s consistently. So we're not there yet. So we took it as an opportunity to kind of see what the temperature is for everybody to play pickleball, since we're getting requests across the county. And again, if it's no interest, then we'll go back to tennis. So it's nothing's being heard or just part of the process.
Katie, the second part of that question was, how did that apply to Enderly? I think that, like Greg said, the purpose of this call is to hear from you all in the community. But we don't make decisions to say, okay, we're going to change it from tennis to pickleball. We know what trends are. We know where people are playing other places and how things happen. But if the Enderly community says, no, we don't want pickleball, we want tennis, then that is what we would put back there. But what we know is pickleball is just exploding all over the country, really. So that is no decision has been made, but that is the whole purpose for this type call.
I know I sound like a broken record, but I really would just like, before a decision on the tennis courts are made, and maybe it's not possible, for the tennis courts to be playable before, a decision about whether it's, if it's not being used because you can't play tennis on it. That seems to be
a no-win situation. It seems like there should be some repairs made to it, and then when people see that they can play tennis, then at some point, if there's still no interest, but right now the courts are not playable.
That's a good point.
I think the other things that I was going to mention really quickly are bike racks and making sure that our park is accessibly friendly for kids that might be in wheelchairs or have additional needs. And then the other thing on my list was, I know that we have a lot of free libraries, like the free library areas. There's never any books in them. They're always broken. So that might facilitate a lot of our literacy concerns, is maybe having like those picnic tables and have a library. So like me and my daughter can take out a book and read it. We've got a large dynamic in our neighborhood of younger kids that need to get out of the house. We've got growing obesity problems as well. And so one of the things that I've seen done in other parks is that workout equipment comment, that was mine, is not just for adults, but there are a lot of equipment that can be purchased at reasonable prices that are kid and adult friendly, that are almost like a game for kids, but it is like a workout. And it makes it fun, and it's also collaborative for the parents and kids to get out together. So that's something.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We've got, partnerships with the Panthers and other parks with the Play 60 equipment, and that it's geared toward the same thing. It can be used for adults and for kids as well, and it adds a kind of a game factor to it.
Sorry, and one more thing. I know this part is expensive, but one of the things that I've noticed with my daughter, and again, I'm speaking only because she is 1 year old and I am that mom that's just crazy protective, is just making sure that we have really good park design as far as what plants are going in there, whether we use rubber mulch as opposed to like making sure that we've got a good boundary for when kids fall and what are they falling
Sure.
on,
Yeah.
and making sure that as part of this design, consideration is made for how the playground is framed in. You've
Right.
got the playground up on a hill, and there's really no, like, it's a hill, so she could tumble. So things like that are important. I'm not saying move the playground by any means, but just like grading and that cushion, whether you use mulch. Right now the mulch is just awful, but
Yeah,
we
it's
only have
easy.
so much funds, but things like that to consider.
Yeah, it's much easier for us to be able to go and replenish the mulch on a regular basis.
Exactly.
The issue there is more the under drain system. And so what we would need to do is go in, if the playground stays in the same location, take all that much mulch out, redo the drainage system underneath so that when it does rain, the water's allowed to drain out more quickly and the surface stays dry and you don't get the puddling, the issues that we've had there.
Yeah, and part of what I've seen, and I was telling Derby this past weekend, I went with my daughter. A lot of what I saw is when it rains a lot, that water comes from the playground down into the softball field, and that's where you're having a lot of crackage and issues with the tennis court. Is that water has nowhere to go, and it's standing
Right.
water. It's a health concern. I couldn't even get my stroller through there, so that's going to be a big undertaking, is figuring out where that water is going to go to make
Sure.
it safe for kids. Because then you've got a lot of erosion and a lot of draining problems long-term wise.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the kind of the final slide. And then if we want to continue the conversation after that, I've got a few more minutes for sure. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. As I mentioned before, we do plan to have some pop-up meetings at the park over the next month or so to kind of continue this conversation. And we'll use the input that we received today through our website and that we gather at the park and take it back to begin to develop a couple of designs or design approaches kind of for the park. And so within a couple of months, we'll have another round of meetings where we will present those designs. Hopefully at that point, we'll be able to have those meetings on site and take your comments and ideas on those designs and come up with the final design for the park. So your input is going to drive kind of how we move forward on this. We will complete those plans in the summer and then share that final plan with everybody and then start construction on the park in late fall of 21 or early 22 with the ultimate goal of having the park complete and ready for everybody's use. Hopefully by the spring next year, but it might slip into the summer a little bit. But that's kind of how we're moving forward. From a contact standpoint, feel free to reach out to myself or Katie Lloyd, Katie Daughtry, or Darnika Waters. We all work with Park and Recreation. And then if you want to reach out to Chris Hunter, Greg Clemmer, or anyone at Betty Ray, you can do that through us, or if you know those folks, they can get contact with us through our website. www.publicinput.com/Enderly is our website. And so for any neighbors that you know of who weren't able to participate in the meeting at noon here, we've got another one at 6, which is the same program. We are going to be recording the meetings, and we've got the same and actually a few additional survey questions that we've posted on there for folks to be able to provide input over the next 3 weeks or so. So with that, I'll thank everybody for their time and see if anybody else had any final thoughts or questions or anything that they'd like to share.
Hey, Bert, quick question. So I know, we're in the age of digital and we assume that a lot of people have the accessibility to computers. What is the approach? And I am happy to help out. I think Sundays are my day off, but going to maybe the local churches or door to door for some of our residents that I'm sure they would want to have input, but they don't have access to a computer or, they didn't get the flyer. How are we going to, and I don't know if it's Dawn, maybe you and I work together from an Enderly neighborhood, community association or whatever perspective, but I feel like this participant group is very narrow. And I feel like we need a broader subset of like, what should be what the fund should be used for and getting more input, especially, we've got a huge elderly population and maybe they, they want to go to the park. Is there something, so I guess my question is what is the outreach efforts for that? Is that something that we should do? And then secondly, is there a way to do a written survey? Or is that something that you can provide us that we can solicitate out?
Yeah, so we've actually developed a written survey and we've been thinking about different ways to distribute that. So if you've got inroads to the community groups, I know Don is heavily active there. We've got some contacts that we've reached out to. Let me know how many paper surveys you want and I will print them out and I will meet you and distribute those. We sent postcards to 1,100 to 1,200 folks kind of in and around the area with our contact info that included email and phone number in case folks just wanted to reach out by phone. So this is just step one of the process. And really, it's going to be an open process for the next 6 months or so.
Perfect. All right. So we'll have plenty of time to get the word out. And Dawn, I can get with you if we need to distribute written surveys. I'm happy to go door to door just so we can get additional input.
Sure.
Okay. Yep, that's fine.
Bert, I was going to say something.
Yep, go right ahead.
Hey, everybody. Again, Commissioner Altman, I just wanted to thank staff for conducting such a good listening session and to tell you I've learned a lot today. And we actually have a county commission meeting tonight, and there's always an opportunity for commissioner reports. And I look forward to talking about Enderly Park and some of the really, strong feelings that we've heard that are, again, very justified and the commitment that we have to follow through on. So I just want to thank everyone who came out today to help make this a stronger community.
I didn't know if anybody else had anything else that they'd like to share. I appreciate that, Commissioner Altman.
Bert, this is Lee Jones. I'm the director of the department, and I want to thank everyone. I've been the director, it'll be 3 years this month. And I want to thank everyone for their input on this very important project. We are committed to taking your input and turning this into a facility that we can all be proud of. One thing that we've jumped on since the beginning of my term as director is fostering an atmosphere of equity across our park system. We have a very large park system. And sometimes you have to hear things that are painful to hear, but necessary to hear. And I don't really think this was either. Your input is so valuable to making this a success. And we have the team of professionals ready to do that. We have the support of the board for funding, and we're going to make it happen. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your patience, your passion, and your support.
Thanks, Lee. And again, thank you everybody for your time this afternoon. Please spread the word, and we will continue to complete outreach and get as many voices heard as possible to make Enderly Park what it needs to be. So thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon.